What is up, guys, and welcome back into the Rams house. First time we've done a live stream in a long time, but I'm happy to be back. Sorry for the technical difficulties and delay, but we're here to talk about what the title and the thumbnail suggests, and that is grading the Rams offseason so far. Because I understand offseason isn't even close to being complete yet. There's going to be a whole draft of new players coming into the Rams. That's going to be really exciting to see what they do there. And then, of course, even leading all the way up to the season, there's going to be additions. There's going to be some subtract there's going to be why can't I say that word? There's going to be subtractions. There we go. Now we got it. And now it is my job to grade how the Rams have done so far, namely just in free agency. But we'll also talk about some of the players that they brought back. We'll talk about some players that left, like a Kobe Durant, like a Roger McCreary, and others. And so that is what today's stream is going to be all about, because as you guys know, the Rams have been close the last 2 seasons to winning Super Bowls. You could argue that if they just got past the Eagles a couple of years ago, and the Rams were about 14 yards away from doing that they probably went on to win the Super Bowl. But, we'll see what would have happened there. And then this last season, obviously, you're right on the doorstep. You're at the NFC Championship game right before the Super Bowl. And everybody said whoever won that game was going to go on to blow out the Patriots like the Seahawks. So this team is close, but there's clear weaknesses. This team was flawed this past season, and the Rams have done their best to address these needs aggressively, bringing in guys like Trent McDuffie, bringing in guys like a Jaylen Watson, and even adding in some special teamers here as a long snapper, as a special teams linebacker. And so while it is early on, we haven't had a draft yet, and there's going to be more additions. The big moves that the Rams have done, is this going to do enough to put them over the top, and what would that grade be? So I'm just going to kind of go down the list here of what the Rams have done so far, including some of the re-signings, because I haven't been able to talk about those with you guys. And then we'll get into some of the guys that they brought in, like Trent McDuffie and a Jaylen Watson. And we are going to go down the list, even with some of the players that they lost. And by the end of this, we'll answer what kind of grade that they have, and if their roster got better and they're ready to compete for a Super Bowl like they're trying to do. So appreciate everybody that's in here. We already got SoFire saying that this is an A+ kind of offseason for the Rams. Love to hear that. I'll get into my grade by the end of this, but starting off with news that feels like it came out forever ago. Some of the people that the Rams brought back. First off, Justin Dedich, who is a backup guard for the Rams. I was actually really glad that they were able to bring him back with the Rams on a minimum kind of deal, 1 year, $1.75 million. It's going to be pretty cheap to bring it back. In my opinion, what is a good depth offensive lineman. And anytime he's been asked to step in for an Avila or even a Dotson, I really liked what Dedich has been able to do. You obviously don't want him to be in a position to have to start all the time, but even if he starts in stretches of 3 to 4 games, he is a solid and decent backup that I didn't want the Rams to lose, because I think he's one of the better backup options that you could have. So bring back Justin Dedich, while it's not going to be a highlight kind of name or a big headliner, I do think is good to establish the depth of the offensive line, because as we've seen in years past, even most recently like 2022, you can have a litany of offensive line people just go down and that lineman change up in that kind of way, and your season could be screwed in that kind of way. So I'm glad that we brought back Justin Dedich. That is a good move for the Rams, and it's a very minimum contract as you would expect, which is good. So we get him for another year. So I like that move. Another one on a vet minimum kind of deal, 1 year, $1.005 million. We brought back Harrison Mevis at kicker. I personally like this. I know some people think he's still kind of unproven at this point in his career. He came onto the Rams midpoint of the season, and all he did was be consistent, and he stepped up when the Rams needed to, even in the playoff moments like in Chicago. And he only missed 1 kick in Seattle, which was a pretty deep kick. And so I'll take having Harrison Mevis back. This is a guy that's just going to provide stability to that kicker position. I think that the Rams really did need that, just because you're at a point where it's like, for me personally, I don't care whatever price the Rams bring in a kicker. I just want consistency, and I want to be sure that our kick isn't going to be blocked. It's not going to be missed, because as Rams fans, we know that even extra points, we're getting to a point where we were getting nervous for an extra point, and that was pretty crazy. So having the stability of Harrison Mevis coming back on a cheap deal for another year, you didn't break the bank for him, but if they did, I wouldn't have been mad, because it's consistency and it's stability. We'll obviously see what he does in year 2. He only had a half year with the Rams, but that half year that he had with the Rams was very consistent. He only missed 1 kick, and he showed that he can step up in the playoffs in big moments like Chicago to go out there and win the game. So really glad that we got Harrison Mevis back. I think that's kind of an underrated one. Not sure where the whole Rams fan base sits with this, but I think that they should be pretty happy getting a guy who's shown what he can do so far with the Rams back for another year. Another one, this one I know very polarizing for Rams fans. A lot of people didn't want to see this happen. I expected it to happen. Rams brought back Xavier Smith on a 1-year, $1.075 million contract. And we all know what happened in the NFC Championship game, the whole debacle of those two muffed punts, and a big reason why we lost. I mean, there's many reasons, but that was a huge contributing factor. It swayed the momentum, gave the Seahawks another touchdown right after we got a stop. So I understand the whole kind of, you don't really want to have that guy back. But the way I see Xavier Smith coming back to the Rams, I'm honestly not too upset about it, because heading up into that NFC Championship game, he was very consistent. He hadn't had a single muff in his career with the Rams. He was very consistent, very solid. Is he going to be dynamic like a Rashid Shaheed or like a Devin Hester in the past or things like that? You're probably not going to get that from Xavier Smith. And I think we understand that. But I'm at a point with the special teams. It's just like, let's just have it not lose the game. Let's be consistent. We're good enough on offense. We're good enough on defense. Where special teams, as long as they can just stay in the background, be decent, be consistent, not mess things up, I'm fine with that. And so bringing Xavier Smith back, I'm fine with it. I'm fine to give him another chance, just because he had a whole host of other games where he didn't mess it up, and that championship one stings. But I'm fine giving him another chance. And I'm sure if he starts messing up, if he starts muffing it or doing anything like that, I think that the Rams are going to have him on a short leash where they're going to make the corrections if they need to. You just look at what they did with a guy like Josh Carty. So I'd expect, if the performance isn't where it's supposed to be, the Rams, again, are going to have him on a short leash. But I'm fine bringing him back. Really cheap contract. He really didn't screw things up before. It's just unfortunate the times that it did happen in the NFC Championship. But we'll see what ends up happening with that one. I know a lot of Rams fans are kind of not liking to see Xavier Smith back, but I'm personally fine with it, at least for now. Before we keep on moving on here, just want to get to some of these comments here. Appreciate you guys being in here. So Fire says wide receiver 3 is next. I do think that's going to be a big one that the Rams address. Will it be for a big trade or something like that? Or is it just going to be a guy who is maybe a lower in the contracts in free agency or in the draft, even like a Mekhi Lemon or something like that? We'll see what that ends up being. But yeah, I definitely think they're going to address wide receiver 3 for sure. Forget AJ Brown. Mekhi Lemon to the Rams will be the final Infinity Stone. That one's great. Mekhi Lemon's a great wide receiver option for the Rams. And if he's not there, there's other really good options there at 13, or if they trade back. And we're talking about a wide receiver 3. So I like the options that the Rams have here. And we'll see what ends up happening, obviously. But I do expect wide receiver 3 to be addressed. So appreciate the comment there. But next up, going past the guy that the Rams just brought back and re-signed. Actually, I'll add in Keir Thomas into that, because they actually extended Keir Thomas recently. Again, that minimum 1 year, $1.075 million. As a depth edge rusher, I do like Keir Thomas, and he's shown flashes. He's obviously not going to get like the bulk of the snaps. It's going to go to the Jared Verse, to the Byron Young, to the Josiah Stewart. But I do like having a guy in Keir Thomas who has been homegrown, who has been with Rams for a while, coming back cheap as depth, who can play against the run, against the pass, and really has only gotten better. And I like adding him back in there with Des Johnson and our other edge rushers there. So those were some of the guys that the Rams ended up bringing back. But even more of them, Cam Curl, a 3-year deal, $36 million. I was very excited to see Cam Curl come back to the Rams. And I was also very fascinated to see the way that the Rams would approach this, because everybody knows the Rams historically, especially under Les Snead and Sean McVay, don't like to pay safeties. And midseason, they extended Quentin Lake, gave him a pretty healthy contract to stay with the Rams. And that was already kind of like an outlier, even though Quentin Lake doesn't typically just play traditional safety. He plays slot, he plays the star, he moves around and does a bunch of different things. But even so, that was kind of a tendency breaker, just like it was with bringing back Nate Landman. The Rams don't typically extend and give money to the linebackers. So we already saw that, and that kind of brought a lot of hesitancy from Rams fans of bringing back Cam Curl, because we already paid a safety in Quentin Lake. Are we going to do it again? And he's due a pretty good contract. He was going to be the best safety on the market. But the Rams ended up rewarding him, and they did something that they doubled down on, something that they don't typically do, and that's paying 2 safeties. So Cam Curl got the 3-year extension, $36 million. It can go up to $39 million. But I do like bringing back Cam Curl. I think that is a good move. He's consistent. I believe he was the leading solo tackler on the Rams. He is just a very phenomenal tackler, can play in the run. We know what Cam Curl can do, and it felt like his ball production got even better taking away the football. So I like bringing him back on a 3-year deal, $36 million up to $39 million. I think that price is worth it based on what you're going to get with him. He does feel like very much of a Ram, a team captain kind of guy, and just consistent. And I like having those guys that are consistent, like we talked about with Harrison Mevis, just like, you know what you're going to get out of him. And at his floor, he's a very good safety. And I just like going into this next year, not having a question mark over safety and hoping that they don't mess it up. So having Quentin Lake, having Cam Curl, Cam Kitchens back once again, I did like bringing Cam Curl back. I think that was a big piece to be able to retain. And I think he does more for this defense than what most people realize. And he is one of those chess piece kind of guys that Chris Shula can move around. So getting Cam Curl back, I really did like that. But let me see. I don't get the Noties Rams house getting shadow banned because he's too close to the truth. I think the reason you didn't get the Noti is because I had to delete the stream we were planning on going on to and then make a new one because technical difficulties ended up happening. So I think that was actually the reason, but we'll go with shadow ban for now. Thanks for coming in. So Fire, before we continue to move on, says, hey Rams house, question. Which practice squad players from last year have the best chance of making the final 53 this championship year? That's a good question. I'm going to star this one. I'll come back to this one later because it does take a little bit more thought. We have more players to talk about here. So I have your question starred for later, but that's a great question. Come back to that one for sure. Another extension that the Rams ended up making was tight end Tyler Higbee and bringing him back. This is one really you could have gone either way. It felt like with the way Sean McVay and Les Snead were talking about bringing back Tyler Higbee and just what the player it means to the organization, it felt more and more like he was going to come back, and it felt more like it was up to him whether he was going to retire or whether he's going to keep playing. But I did feel like there was real interest for the Rams to bring him back, which surprised some people because we have Colby Parkinson, we have Terrence Ferguson, we have Davis Allen. So why would you bring Tyler Higbee back? Well, first off, it's a pretty cheap deal. It's 2 years, $6 million. And that is actually not a ton to be paying to a tight end, especially one who's done a lot of great things in the league for the Rams. And I think a big reason why the Rams brought back Tyler Higbee is because of the presence that he brings to the locker room. You hear that term like glue guy thrown around a lot of the times of just somebody who's helping for the culture and who's helping to establish things in the tight end room, but also just the team as a whole. And it's not that Tyler Higbee is a bad player at this point in his career, but I think the bigger reason that the Rams brought him back was, again, consistency, knowing what they're going to get out of him, knowing he's a veteran, he's reliable, but he's also a model of just what it looks like to be a Rams tight end here, and just helps. They always talk about the juice that Tyler Higbee brings to the huddle, different players and coaches. And when we saw him come back a couple of years ago after that injury, be reinserted to the tight end room, be reinserted to the offense as a whole, you saw how much electricity that brought to the huddle. So I do think that as much as it is just having a consistent guy who knows the offense, that's why you bring back Tyler Higbee, but it's also, you know what you're going to get from a veteran leadership perspective who brings the energy and who's able to help young tight ends like we have in this room to be able to develop. So honestly, I wasn't against that one. If they gave him a big contract to stay with the Rams even more years, like another 3-year contract, and it was a big contract, I think I would have been more against it just because Tyler Higbee does struggle to stay healthy. We've seen that in the last few years, and he is getting older, and we do have young tight ends, but based on the fact that the contract isn't going to be super steep for the Rams, I do like having a guy who has been there and has done that, and who the Rams players and coaches know is a really good leader for this system. So those are my thoughts on Tyler Higbee. Curious to hear what you guys think about bringing him back, if you guys are for it or against it, just based on all the tight ends that we have. And I know that Kenyon Sadiq rumor to the Rams at tight end is still very hot right now, even with the 4 tight ends that we have right now. So curious to hear what you guys have to think about that rumor as well. But now getting into some of the bigger moves that the Rams made. And I talked about this in an isolated video, of course, but we're grading the Rams offseason here so far. So we're going to talk about it again. Trent McDuffie coming to the Los Angeles Rams to try to help fill what was the biggest need, arguably, for the Rams. You could put it up there with special teams. But for the last handful of years, the cornerback room has really been a weak point, and we saw this come into play a lot last season. We saw teams really beginning to just attack the secondary in a way of getting the ball out quickly and just picking on them, to where our pass rush, which was a strength a couple of years ago and something that was becoming a force to be reckoned with, really just lost a lot of the teeth of what they could do because the secondary just was more so the cornerback room wasn't holding up to their end of the bargain. So bringing in a guy like Trent McDuffie, obviously it cost a lot. Actually, looking back here, it was a first rounder this year, a 5th rounder this year, a 6th rounder this year, and a 2027 3rd round pick. So obviously it was expensive to go out there and trade for Trent McDuffie, who is going to be playing on his 5th-year option. But then the Rams ended up giving him a massive contract to be able to stay with the Rams for years to come. 4 years, $124 million. Some people argue that's more like 4 years, $107 million. But either way, this is a contract that is breaking the bank. He is the highest paid cornerback in NFL history. And so the Rams have expectations for him. They brought him in, they traded all of that away, and then they gave him the big contract on top of that. So they clearly have a plan for him. Obviously, he has the familiarity with Jimmy Lake, who's our DB's coach now, with Aubrey Pleasant leaving. So that makes a lot of sense. And I have a lot of Chiefs fans that are in my life. There's a lot that live in Colorado. So I've seen a lot of Trent McDuffie, and I know what he brings to the table. You obviously saw what his personality was like when he came to the Rams and what he was like in that first press conference. Of it just feels like he's the definition of what the Rams look for. He's humble. He's looking for team first. So I love that from that side of it. And it makes sense why the Rams really liked his personality first off to bring in, because it's just a fit with what the Rams look for. And he talked about how he wanted to be what the Rams look for and define as a Ram. So I do like that from a personality standpoint. And from a talent standpoint, obviously, former All-Pro, he's only 25 years old, and you can move him around. You can have him play in the slot. You can have him play outside. You can have him try to erase a receiver. You can also have him just move around if you want to as a chess piece. But either way, the Rams cornerback room got so much better with a guy like Trent McDuffie, and I think it gets a lot more creative. He is primarily like a man coverage corner, not just to say he can't play zone coverage, but man coverage is where he thrives. He can press. So with the addition of a guy like Trent McDuffie and even his teammate Jaylen Watson that's coming in, what you guys have heard about and what I've been excited about is the fact that I think it's signaling that the Rams are going to be running a lot more man coverage, a lot more press, getting in people's faces and doing things like that. And that's exciting because the Rams, even in their Super Bowl year, felt like there were a lot of just that off zone kind of just bend but don't break, 10 yards off, even if it's a 3rd and 5, you're going to be playing that far off. So what's exciting about bringing in a Trent McDuffie is not only his versatility, but it's also signaling that the Rams are probably going to be using a lot more man coverage in the past, as well as switching DB coaches with Aubrey Pleasant going out and Jimmy Lake coming in. I think that's signaling that the Rams are shifting to this man coverage. And so Trent McDuffie, he's proven, like I said, he's an all-pro, really good tackler. The amount of fumbles that he forced in his time with Kansas City isn't a guy who gets a ton of like interception production. It definitely got better the last couple of years than it was his first couple, but he's just a guy that can move around and he's going to play sticky coverage. And I really like the man coverage upside with him. Did they give him a lot? Did they give up a lot for him as far as a trade, as far as the contract that he got? Yes, they did. But I think that speaks to how highly they think of him and what they want to do with him. And there was, I forgot who it was, which reporter that was talking about. They talked to Sean McVay like as this whole trade was going down, and he was absolutely hyped up to be able to get Trent McDuffie. Like he was over the moon. So that gets me excited to know that the Rams have a plan for him, because one of the things that I think about a lot with this Trent McDuffie move is, okay, where are the Rams going to be using him? Because he, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion, does his best work in the slot. And that's where Quentin Lake does a lot of his work with the Rams, and that's where they've used him. But were the Rams using him in the slot in that star position, Quentin Lake, out of necessity, or was that out of where he's best used? I think it's kind of a mixture of both. I think that Quentin Lake is a really good slot kind of star corner who can be moved around and used as a chess piece, as a blitzer, who can tackle well, does all those things that we know Quentin Lake can do. But how does that affect it with bringing in a guy like Trent McDuffie, who that's been his best reputation? It's his best work has come from the slot, not only from a coverage standpoint, but he can be used creatively. The Chiefs love to blitz Trent McDuffie, and you'll see that a lot, that he had a lot of pressures, had a lot of sacks. So that's just where I'm curious as a football fan of like, where the Rams are going to line up Trent McDuffie when you have a Quentin Lake. Are they going to keep him outside? Are they going to put him on the inside? He talked about, Trent McDuffie talked about that he told the Rams he's open to play wherever they need him to. And I kind of think that's where it's going to be reflected in his play. I think that the Rams are going to use McDuffie in the slot. They're going to put him outside. They're going to move him around in a bunch of different ways just to make their defense as creative as possible. I don't think they're going to pigeonhole him to just be an outside corner or just be an inside corner or just shadow the best receiver. I think they can kind of mix and match here. And that definitely gets me excited. I think he'll do his best work in the slot for sure, but I do think that the Rams are going to use him a decent amount outside. So bringing him in for that contract for the draft picks, expensive, but I think it speaks to how the Rams see the way that they want to use him. And that gets me excited. I think that this just overall raises the floor of this defense. And something I keep thinking about with his addition as well is like, we always just think about what it does from an X's and O perspective of, okay, we're getting this player, so he's going to provide this ability because he's good at this. But something that I really get from Jaylen Watson and from Trent McDuffie in their press conferences and just hearing some early things since joining the Rams about what they're like, they keep talking about wanting to bring a Super Bowl to LA. and they've won 2 Super Bowls. They've been to 3 together, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And they keep talking about how they want to be the kinds of guys to be able to show what it looks like to be a Super Bowl winning team, a Super Bowl winning defense. They know what it takes. They've won 2 of them. They've been to 3 of them. And so they clearly know what it takes to be able to go out there and do it. And what it reminds me of is like when the Rams brought in Von Miller back in 2021. And he really helped the Rams, not only just from a pass rush standpoint, what he did there, but he was huge in motivation. He brought in the Super Bowl trophy to the Rams to just let them visualize what it looked like to win a Super Bowl. But he also gave them a lot of advice about not letting the moment get too big. And it reminds me of that Jared Verse comment where he was talking about on a podcast after the Rams Seahawks game, the NFC Championship game, that when the Seahawks weren't lying down the way the Rams expected them to, the Rams defense didn't know what to do. They were kind of shocked and they were stunned for a second. And then that's when the Seahawks went on their run. I think something that doesn't get brought up enough with the additions of McDuffie and Watson is that these guys feel like those are the kinds of guys that are not going to let that happen again. Like not let them have the expectation that the opposing team just going to roll over or be in shock or be that kind of young mentality defense that is good and dangerous in some ways, but in other ways it can be dangerous because they don't know what they don't know and they don't have enough experience. So bringing in these 2 guys, more than just what they can bring from a football aspect, excites me because I think they're going to bring maturity and they're going to raise the standards of the defense and they're going to show what it takes to win a Super Bowl, as cliche as those things sound. So we talked about McDuffie. We kind of talked about Watson a little bit, but yeah, the Rams obviously added in Jaylen Watson, who was the former teammate with Trent McDuffie on the Chiefs. And this is a guy, I think there's more of a clear defined role with what he's going to do with the Rams. Whereas like McDuffie, I think he's going to get moved around a lot. He's going to be a chess piece similar to what Lake is. I think we know what Jaylen Watson's going to do. He's going to be the outside boundary corner. He's got the length. He's got the speed. He got the arm length. That's going to really help for going up against bigger body receivers like a guy we've heard about recently, A.J. Brown, like a T. Higgins, or any of those bigger kind of receivers that have given us problems in the past. I think that's what Jaylen Watson is in here to do. He's going to be playing that boundary kind of corner. He had his best year as a pro this last season, and he got paid the 3-year, $51 million contract to come in and help the Rams. Obviously a pretty healthy contract, but I do really like bringing in Jaylen Watson with the experience that he has, but also just have that solidified guy on the outside that, okay, you can just go over here on the X receiver and try to shut him down. This is going to help if there's going to be a 50-50 ball thrown up there. You know, he's not just going to run through the receiver and get a pass interference. I think this is really going to help against those bigger body receivers which are littered across the NFC West and across the NFC. And I'm excited to see how the Rams are able to use McDuffie and Watson together with that little rapport that they have there. And another man coverage corner in Jaylen Watson, who is really good at pressing as well, which, again, I think signals to where the Rams are kind of going compared to in years past, being that off-zone bend but don't break kind of style. So I love Jaylen Watson, another good tackler, good man coverage corner. He's going to make the windows a lot stickier. There's that whole stat about DVOA, which I don't have in front of me anymore. I think it was like Chiefs went from the 4th overall DVOA defense to like 29th or 30th when the Jaylen Watson was out. So I do think that shows how much of an impact he's made on their secondary. And having him come in with Trent McDuffie does excite me. Both these guys cost a lot. Obviously, $51 million over 3 years for Jaylen Watson, $124 over 4 years for Trent McDuffie. That's a lot of money the Rams allocated to the secondary. But this is what we've been wanting as Rams fans. We've been wanting to invest this in there. So now when you're going up against the Seattle and you have to play against JSN, or you're going up against what the Bears have at receiver with Luther Burden, or whoever comes across your face that you're going to have to play, you have guys that you're confident in. They don't have to shut down every single play. They're going to lose their reps like every cornerback does. But having the solidified guys back there just gives a lot of confidence for me. And I'm excited to see what Emmanuel Forbes is going to be able to do when he's not really like the number 1 or 1A kind of corner for the Rams. He's now going to be all the way down to like that number 3 corner. And I think maybe some more of that ball protection, the interceptions could return to his game because he's not having to be the shutdown guy. And maybe he doesn't get picked on as much. We'll see what ends up happening there. But definitely like the move of McDuffie and Watson. It costs a lot, but I think it's worth it to bring in talent like this. Next up, we're getting into another highest paid kind of position. Someone that you probably may not be expecting. Joe Cardona, our new long snapper, is the highest paid long snapper in the NFL right now. You guys probably don't know that. It's not that much money. In reality, it's 2 years, $3.4 million. But for a long snapper, that's a lot of money, and it makes him the highest paid long snapper. So Rams clearly like him. He's coming from the Patriots. He's gotten a lot of experience. I believe he went to Navy in college. So he has a good background there, and the Rams clearly like him. This does spell the end of Jake McQuaid, and that means that there's no more St. Louis Rams on this roster, which kind of breaks my heart a little bit, but it's okay. We got a good long snapper in Joe Cardona. And again, special team stability, that's the word I keep looking for here in this year, just because it was very unstable the last couple of years. There's just a lot of instability there, and they legitimately were losing us games. We know this. So having a good long snapper is going to be more than what people think, because even Alex Ward, I think, was a big part of our issues in the kicking game, having kicks blocked, not targeting guys right. I think there's a lot of different layers to it, but long snappers are important and they do more than what people think. So I like having Joe Cardona come in here. That's really all I can say about this one. And I think the Rams really like him. This is a guy that was rumored to come to LA based on his good history. So I'm just glad to have him here as a long snapper. But let's see. Sorry, I got distracted with a comment. Next up, another special teamer. So the Rams really valuing the special teams. Grant Stuard coming in from the Lions, 2 years, $5.05 million. So not a lot. Does this spell the end of Troy Reeder, being that they paid a linebacker to be that kind of special teams presence? I'm never going to spell the end of Troy Reeder, because every time you think that he's going to be done, he ends up coming back. So no comment on Troy Reeder. He'll probably find his way back in some sort of fashion. But Grant Stuard, I do like. Just talking to Lions fans, hearing from their fan base and hearing from different publications from Detroit, he is a guy who's just a great special teamer. And he's one of those, kind of like Ben Skoranek was for us, but even more so with the Steelers. He really became, like, I think he was a special teams Pro Bowler for the Steelers. Ben Skoranek was. And every team has these kind of guys if they value special teams. The Patriots were this kind of way for a while and still are, of just having those gems on special teams that you pay them that kind of money because they do make a difference and an impact. They help you with kick coverage. They help you with blocking, all that kind of stuff. Grant Stuard, that's all I've heard from him. I'm sure he could play on the defensive side, but we have good linebackers right now in Nate Landman, Omar Spates, and even Sean Dolak. So I think Dolak and Cardona on special teams is going to help a lot with the kick coverage. It's going to help a lot with sure tackling, and that's what he's been known for. And I really like how the Rams are valuing special teams by bringing in Joe Cardona, bring back Harrison Mevis, and then Grant Stuard, and then obviously Bubba Ventrone, the new special teams coordinator. Feels like the Rams have a legitimate vision with what they're doing right now, and it's not just going to be passed off to the side to figure out later on in the year when it starts to cost them. So I do like that they're valuing the special teams, even if, you know, Joe Cardona is the highest paid long snapper in the league at $3.4 million over 2 years. I don't care. Like, get the special teams better. I would love for it to be a weapon. I think it'd be really awesome to have a special teams unit that other teams feared, and you could, like, kind of like Johnny Hekker, Greg Zuerlein, the different returns that we had at that point. I mean, JoJo Natson, I don't know why that one flashed in my head, but Farrell Cooper at the time, Tavon Austin in the past with Johnny Hekker. So, like, I would love it to be one of those weapons, but I think with where the Rams team is at right now, we shouldn't have to have expectations that the special team should be a weapon. Just don't mess things up. And that's kind of where I'm at. Have it be stable. Don't mess things up. We should have a good enough offense and defense to be able to win football games, just as long as they don't cost us games. The special teams, that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, so those are all the additions. Those are the re-signings, the acquisitions that the Rams made. As far as the Rams players that we have lost, surprisingly, there's only been 3 that the Rams have lost from this past season. And Kobe Durant, he went off to the Cowboys, the land shark. We're going to forever be grateful for what he did for the Rams. I know people have different opinions on what Kobe Durant did for the Rams. Some people really like him. Some people don't. Some people just like him for his personality. I'm kind of in the middle there. Like, I like his personality a lot. He's a fun personality. His nickname, like, you can't go wrong with Kobe Durant from just an athletics standpoint and all of that. He was very inconsistent in his coverage. Like, he was pretty up and down, I would say, from week to week. But he did make splash plays. He turned over the football a lot of the times. And so having him leave the building obviously is sad in that way. You're going to lose a little bit of the production of getting turnovers. But I do think that the Rams cornerback room did get better from just an overall down-to-down coverage standpoint with McDuffie and with Watson, obviously. But Landshark taking his talents over to Dallas actually got a pretty cheap deal there. So the Rams are not going to be having him come back. I still always wonder what it would look like to have a guy like Kobe Durant to play off of a guy who's just a true shutdown guy. Because we obviously got 1 year of Jalen Ramsey and Kobe Durant together, but that was Kobe's rookie year. That was 2022 disaster kind of season. But just as a football fan, I wonder what it would look like to have Kobe Durant playing off of a true shutdown guy, to have balls thrown towards him more. Does he get more interceptions? I don't know. It's not going to be our problem anymore He's over at Dallas, but going to miss Landshark. But I do think that our cornerback room did get better with the additions we made. But going to be curious to see how he does there. We also lost another cornerback, one that I was expecting the Rams to get back in Roger McCreary. He actually went to the Lions, and a lot of Rams fans were expecting Roger McCreary to come back because the Rams traded, I don't even remember at the deadline, was it like a 5th round, 6th round pick, something like that? They traded pretty decent capital for Roger McCreary and brought him into the cornerback room. Unfortunately, he got hurt when he was actually just starting to get integrated. I remember against the Buccaneers and that nice blowout, that game that we had on Sunday Night Football, we used him on some sort of blitz on Baker Mayfield, and then he pulled a hamstring or something like that, and he didn't get back until the playoffs. So we really didn't see Roger McCreary in fullness, and that's sad because the Rams clearly thought high of him. I think he's a pretty decent cornerback. But he's heading over to Detroit, getting signed in the first week of free agency. Definitely surprised me. I thought he'd maybe go week 2, week 3, but good for him. He's going to be heading over to the Lions. I do think his skill set is pretty similar with what Quentin Lake and now Trent McDuffie are doing as like the slot, physical, man coverage, good twitchy kind of guys there, to where maybe it wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense bringing back Roger McCreary because it's redundancy of what you already have. I would have liked to see him back as depth, but with the way that the Rams address cornerback right now, I don't mind a ton that he left. I just hope he does well there because obviously the injuries kind of messed it up for the Rams. He couldn't really get that full debut like we expected. And then Tutu Atwell, the last Ram that left the team, always going to be somewhat of a mystery of what happened. Rams paying him a fully guaranteed $10 million contract last year. And I mean, like barely getting any opportunities. Sean McVay kind of alluded to the fact that they leaned a lot more into heavy 13 personnel, as we all know. And with that, you only have one wide receiver on the field. It makes the most sense to have a Puka, Devontae, but even Konate Muntfield was getting involved there. So Tutu just really wasn't getting a lot of his time to shine. And I don't think he ever really had his full breakout moment with the Rams or games strung together that were really good. But I mean, I do remember 2023, Puka's rookie year, week 1, Cooper Kupp wasn't playing and Tutu Atwell had like 124 yards or something like that against the Seahawks. And so I'm curious to see what he does with the Dolphins. For the Rams, I would like to have him back just because I'm always curious what it would have looked like if we fully utilized him. But I'm happy in Tutu's case that he was able to leave and go to somewhere where not like right now he's looking at wide receiver 1 for the Dolphins. And I think he could get 1,000 yards if he just gets used enough. I just don't think the Rams ever were going to use him. It definitely does feel like Sean McVay is a guy that wants to use that speed receiver and really wants to dabble into that skill set for his offense. But they don't get used in the sense of heavy production. It's more to like open up the underneath parts, the backside digs, the slants and all of that with the field stretcher like a Tutu. So yeah, lost Kobe Durant, lost Roger McCreary, and lost Tutu Atwell, but we got back Justin Dedich, Harrison Mevis, Xavier Smith, Cam Curl, Tyler Higbee. We got Trent McDuffie. We got Jaylen Watson. We got Joe Cardona, Grant Stuard, and we also brought back Keir Thomas to the roster that we already have. So getting into the point of why this stream is a thing, then I'll get to your comments. I appreciate everybody in here. What's the letter grade for the Rams in this offseason so far before we even hit the draft, before the rest of it's here? This is just a fun little exercise. We know that this Rams offseason is heavily driven by winning a Super Bowl in 2026. And that's what a lot of these moves are signaling, that the Rams are putting their chips in right now, as they should, with the window that they have with Matthew Stafford before they have to pay a guy like Jared Verse, Byron Young, Puka Nacua, Steve Avila, all these kinds of guys, Kobe Turner. This is the window that you have to strike, and it does feel like the Rams are finding a good balance of good aggressiveness, but not going too far over the top to me. They addressed their biggest need before the official league year even started at cornerback, and now really the question becomes like, what is the Rams' biggest need? And that's a really good question to ask because I don't think there's a really glaring need. So if the Rams were to stay healthy, I think that this team has a really good shot at going out and winning the Super Bowl. I do think that it does hinge a lot on health, and that's why you got to strike when you're in those good years of playing well. So if the Rams stay healthy, I do think with the additions that they made, they have enough to go over the top and to win the Super Bowl. And their margin for error got a little bit bigger, which is a good thing with bringing in the cornerbacks that they did, because now that's not as much of a glaring weakness. And you hope that special teams comes along as well. And the Rams really didn't lose a lot of big talent like Kobe Durant. We love him. Roger McCreary, we love him. Tutu Atwell, we love him. But we really didn't lose any huge pieces to where I have confidence that this team can go out there and win a Super Bowl. Like we almost did with the cornerback room that we had that was getting ripped apart by NFL fans, by Rams fans. Last 2 years, you can make an argument that we could have won the Super Bowl. Like a lot of other teams can make an argument, to be fair. But that's where I do have confidence with what the Rams are able to do. I would say right now, where I'm at, where this Rams offseason is graded for me, I'm going between an A- and an A, not quite an A+. It's hard when it's an incomplete offseason, admittedly. Like, there's going to be so many more moves to be made. But obviously, like, you gave up a lot for Trent McDuffie. You don't have those 2 first-round picks. Do you really need to have those 2 first-round picks, though? I don't really think so. The Rams draft well without the first-round picks. They already have a pick at 13. But you gave up, a lot of draft picks. You gave up a lot of money to Trent McDuffie, and you're banking on the fact that he can return to that all-pro kind of form, but he is still young. And so I don't think that's a bad risk to take. Overall, though, I would say I'm going to rest that an A as our offseason grade to this point, not an A-. Right there in the middle, there's going to be more moves to be made, but it does feel like they're prioritizing and specializing in areas that have been big weaknesses, that being the cornerback room and that being these special teams. And everywhere else feels pretty good. Like people are talking about in the comments, like wide receiver 3 is probably what they're targeting next. We heard the A.J. Brown kind of rumors. Glad that didn't end up going through. But now wide receiver 3, I would expect to be addressed in the draft pretty early on as well. So really, when you're looking at this Rams team, I think you can make an argument that this is one of the most, if not the most complete team from top to bottom, every single position depth-wise that the Rams have had in the Sean McVay era. And you'd have to really go back and check into that. But I feel pretty confident saying that. So I'd leave this offseason so far at an A for the Rams. I think, again, they just made the right moves. They were aggressive. They did take some risks, but I like the risks that they take that you can bank on with younger kind of players that can be core pieces around the team. And again, prioritizing the weaknesses to make them a legitimate strength now is the real hope. And I think the biggest thing that you have a question mark heading into this season for the Rams is going to be, okay, like, is special teams fixed enough? I think that's going to be a big question, but I think the Rams put in the resources and they're going to do more in the draft to be able to help address that and to make it better. We're just hoping that obviously it doesn't cost us games. And I think you can feel pretty good with what the Rams did. So feels pretty good to be a Rams fan right now. Definitely golden era, but I'm going to get into some of your comments again here. Thanks everybody for being in here. Great move to bring him back also means no Sadiq. Talking about Tyler Higbee there. Yeah, it's interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams got Kenyon Sadiq just based on the fact of where the Rams are with their team right now, how complete it does look. I mean, maybe you're looking at the future with bringing him in. I would not be at all surprised, especially athletically with what he can do. But also it does feel like he's very similar to Terrence Ferguson, and it feels like you may stunt his growth and his development a little bit if you bring him in. So I do think it definitely signals that a lot more rather than if we let Higbee walk for sure. Muad'Dib, thanks for coming in. Love that profile picture as always. He says, I still think we target a cornerback and a safety maybe. I can't tell what you mean there. AJ Alcee, let me know if I said that right. And then D'Angelo Pons, I do like him a lot too. AR transfer. And then we're captain Snead's favorite, those 2 characteristics. Indiana did away with the CBTs with a new coach. Yeah, the Rams do value that kind of team captain transferring up. That's what they've really looked at and valued, like a guy like Kobe Turner, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk. Those are all even – no, I don't think Avila ended up transferring up. But, yeah, they do really like that team captain, the guy that was able to transfer up and go up in level. So I do think that those are good little point outs there. I'd love to have D'Angelo Pons, to be honest, at cornerback. I know he's small, but he's a really good athlete. And I think not having him be the number 1 corner like he could have been if we didn't bring in a McDuffie and Jaylen Watson, that would have been a little bit more shaky, but I wouldn't mind getting him a little bit later on in the draft for sure. I like Higbee for cheap. I also think they can target Marlon Klein, Michigan captain. Interesting. I haven't heard his name. I'm getting pretty good into the draft right now, doing like some research and things like that. I still don't know all the prospects. So there's going to be some little gray areas and some gaps that I don't know, but I'll trust your word on that one for sure. Oh, Klein might count for foreign players. That'd be interesting. Watson is very durable. Definitely a good trade to have because you could be the best player in the world, but if you're not on the football field at all, it's not going to matter one bit. So having Jaylen Watson being a durable guy, even Trent McDuffie, a very durable guy, is going to be good. I think Jaylen Watson did miss some time last season, but it wasn't a ton of games for sure. Sincere, thanks for coming in. Says, yeah, I don't know why Rams are against Forbes being the cornerback 3. He was easily the best corner on the roster this year, and he's going from cornerback 1 to cornerback 3. I agree with this. I think slotting him down to cornerback 3 gets me really excited because was Emmanuel Forbes the best cornerback in the league or even the best cornerback on the Rams for the entire year, like week in and week out, just consistently good? I wouldn't say that, but I would say that he took good strides and he did good with the Rams. And I think that moving him from that cornerback run down to cornerback 3, first off, gives him an opportunity to get more of those interceptions like he did in college and get that ball production back. But also, he's going to have that confidence coming into this year with the Rams with a really good cast around him. And what I believe is the last year under contract, if I'm wrong. So that definitely gets me really excited to see him at cornerback 3 and take that pressure off. I think slotting him down to cornerback 3 makes all the sense in the world. Yeah, Rip McQuaid. Indeed, Rip McQuaid, the St. Louis era. Maybe he comes back in some capacity. I don't know. Let's see. Who's getting a Cardona jersey? That'd be hilarious. So Fire says Reader is a special teams guru. He is. That's what's interesting about bringing in Grant Stuard here to the team. That's been his kind of mark with the Lions at linebacker. They paid him pretty decently for a special teams linebacker. But again, I'm never going to rule out Troy Reader coming back. It's almost like you should expect that more than anything. Please get Troy Reader off the team. Troy the meme reader, very much so. Yeah, this is a good question by Muad'Dib. And I think that this is what Sheriff Joe Bags asked me in Peo a couple weeks ago. Like, where is the hole on this team? What is the glaring need on this Rams team? I don't think personally that there's any glaring need. I think you can get better at every position. Like, if you really wanted to look around the league, but how realistic is it that you can actually get better at that position? Those players just aren't available. So when it comes to a legitimate hole, like a black hole on your team, an area that you're like, man, if we don't address this, this is just going to get picked apart. I don't really think that there's a legitimate hole. Again, special teams kind of up in the air, but I do think that they got better. And I think that they were pretty consistent down the second half of the year last year. Everybody just remembers the Xavier Smith fumble in that playoff game, which was obviously not great. But overall, I don't think you can point to a area that's just like, oh man, we just have to get this better. And that does give me confidence here. Maybe you could point to linebacker 2. A lot of people get on Omar Speights because he's not truly like a sideline to sideline, good athlete, good coverage linebacker. So maybe you could say like coverage linebacker for the Rams would be a spot that you get better, somebody who's a good athlete. But even then, if you bring in like a good coverage linebacker in the draft or something like that, how much better are they going to be than Omar Speights, who's been with us for a couple of years now, who has that experience under his belt, who may have a better floor at the moment while his ceiling isn't super high. So like definitely a good question. Curious to hear what you guys have to say. Looks like SoFi agrees. He says linebacker and wide receiver 3 is our holes. I'm hoping to see Landman's play and production improve back to what it was. Like, felt like after we gave him his contract, I don't know if you guys agree with this, but after we gave him his contract, the play just kind of didn't fall off, but it just got quieter, and it felt like you weren't feeling his presence as much. But it also felt like from like week 12 on, and this is backed up by like metrics and statistics, that the whole Rams defense just kind of fell off for no reason. So definitely think that that's what does get me excited about the cornerback additions of McDuffie and Watson is like it's going to give more time for our pass rush to get home. And then when that happens, I think our linebackers are going to get better. And I think it's just going to overall provide a facelift for this defense. And I think that the linebackers should get better. And I think Landman should get back to the play that he was at before he got his contract, hopefully. I think the Rams need a better coverage linebacker. The Seahawks had Omar Speights on skates the NFC Championship game. Yeah, that was definitely not the best look for Omar Speights, our guy out there. So hopefully, I mean, we'll see if the Rams try to address that in any kind of way. Again, I'm still wondering, like, I would think through the draft would be the best way that the Rams could get a coverage linebacker. At this point, there's not a lot of great options left in free agency. So again, at that point, if you're the Rams, would you rather just play Omar Speights, who knows the system and who's been here for a couple of years, has that experience, who again doesn't have a high ceiling, but has a good enough floor maybe right now? But it did feel like Omar Speights definitely got taken advantage of a little bit there, especially athletically. Replace him with a lemon shark. I like that. Mekhi Lemon. Are you guys all still high, like wanting to get Mekhi Lemon? Because I think a lot of his hype has died down a little bit. Like it used to just like only be Mekhi Lemon. Now I'm seeing guys like Jordan Tyson get thrown out there. Carnell Tate has always been kind of a guy that's been up there for receivers, obviously. But like I guess Lemon is the most realistic to make it to the Rams. But I'm even seeing a lot of Omar Cooper people talking about at wide receiver for like a wide receiver 3. I'd be so down for that. But curious to see where you guys are on with Lemon, because I honestly like I don't think the Rams can really make a bad pick here unless they pick a guy who's just like supposed to go down way down in the rounds or has a crazy injury history or something like that. So curious to see where you guys are on with that. I think they let him go because him and McDuffie play similar roles in the secondary. I'm guessing you're talking about Roger McCreary, but maybe you're talking about Kobe Durant. But either way, I do think, yeah, the Rams have kind of moved on to the guys that they have now. Makes sense. Rams made a huge mistake keeping Tutu Atwell last year and getting rid of Cup. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a very head-scratching kind of thing. I do think that a lot of it did come down to the 13 personnel that the Rams leaned into. I think if they stayed in that traditional 11 personnel with the 3 receivers on the field all the time, kind of offense that they had been doing for the last, basically since McVay has been here with the Rams, like that's been the identity. I do think Tutu Atwell would have done a lot better, but it's definitely going to be a mystery. I think I see a lot of people talk about like instead of paying Tutu what he did, pay Cup that kind of contract. And Cup has talked about that he was willing to take a pay cut to stay with the Rams, but the Rams were very adamantly wanting to move on. Like they were done, they were ready. I do wonder what Cooper Kupp's role would have looked like with the Rams. He would have been fine to play whatever role that the Rams asked him of. That's just the kind of guy he is. But like there is an argument that Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp play very similar styles of a role in that slot, and that the reports were that was getting kind of redundant for the Rams of having 2 of those similar play style guys. To have those guys on the field at the same time did make it a little bit harder to be able to have those plays drawn up, which is why like Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams complement each other really well, because Devontae plays on the outside. He plays X while, Puka does the intermediate short. He did dabble in the deeper stuff, but plays a lot in the slot. So like, how would that have looked to have Cooper Kupp back again? Like, how much usage would you have got out of him? I don't really know. And how much would Cooper Kupp have been on the field if 13 personnel stays the way it did when you only have 1 wide receiver on the field? Do you put it like, I don't know. It's very, I go back and forth on that one. Very, very curious, but definitely sad to see him wearing Seahawks colors for sure. Gotta say, weird spot for a shoe. I don't know. It's been there. My brother got them for Christmas for me. They actually like on the back of them they say Rams house on it. And so they used to be like facing this way so you can see it, but yeah, that's where they are now. Football says here Hopkins, I believe you're talking about DeAndre Hopkins, was looking for a contender to play for. Honestly, I'd probably pass on Hopkins at this point in his career. And him and Devontae Adams play very similar styles with that X receiver. So, I mean, I guess why not add him in there? But with 13 personnel, I don't know if I'd be huge on adding in DeAndre Hopkins, but I'm probably in the minority there. We were 2 good reps away from the 3-peat. Oh, yeah, we were close. We were very close. This would be actually so sick. So far, he says, only thing that could make our offseason better, the return of AD99. Gosh, that would be insane. I think that this is the first year that Aaron Donald's contract is like off the Rams' actual payroll, like for the first time since he's been drafted by the Rams, which is crazy to hear. But having him return back to this lineup with the cornerbacks we have now, like, jeez. I know games aren't won on paper, but basically just like give us the trophy at that point. Let's see. Mudeeb says A+. I don't know how we lose a game. That's a great grade there. I'm between A- and A. Either one is a great grade. Honestly, I do expect the Rams to lose games in the season because no matter how good your team is, it does feel like every team has one of those or a couple of those games where it's like, man, this is just not us. Like, this is not who we are. Like, who is this team on the field? And there's very consistently, like every year, at least 1 or 2 of those games for the Rams, no matter how good they are as a roster. And so I definitely expect some losses, but like how many losses? I'd say the Rams, the amount of wins they get is going to be anywhere between 12 to 14. That's kind of the range I'm thinking, which is very optimistic, and it's all dependent on health. Like if that's another reason why you could lose more games is if the Rams just start getting beat up, which we hope doesn't happen. But yeah, this team's looking very good for sure. Let's see. Steve Avila did 4 years at TCU, but was a captain. Yeah, that's what I remember, actually. Appreciate you for clarifying on that. Because, yeah, he was a team captain, but he didn't ever transfer up. But All right. So far, it says off topic. I've been working hard on hype videos. Would mean a lot if you guys could check out the So Far LA Rams. I'll definitely do that after the stream's up. Appreciate you for letting me know. Those ones are fun for sure. We met with Trotter, the linebacker. Okay. Interesting. I like this. Landon was less nut punchy after he got paid. Yeah, we saw a lot less of those kind of fumble, big play opportunities that Nate Landman was doing so well. Like in the early to mid part of the year, it was like if we didn't get a week of it, we were almost like getting suspicious, like there's going to be one coming soon. And then near the end of the year, it wasn't only like the peanut punches that were going away. It just felt like overall his play, again, didn't really regress. It just felt like he just kind of disappeared. But we'll see. I think a trade down for an edge. We need a third edge rusher like what Ford did on the interior. Give us fresh legs. His wide receiver class is deep, so get one in the second. I could totally see that. I could definitely see that approach by the Rams because the receiver class is very deep here. Getting another edge would help, especially Byron Young being in the last year under contract with the Rams. Maybe you think ahead a little bit there if there's a good one available. I do like Josiah Stewart, though, at the third edge rusher position. And I think that the more opportunities that he gets, he already got rotated in a decent amount, but I think the more opportunities that he's going to get at the edge position is just going to benefit him. Plays well against the run, plays well against the pass. So honestly, I wouldn't overall mind that. I think more edge rushers, more pass rushers that you can get to keep the fresh legs, to keep a good rotation going is never a bad thing, to be honest. So far, he says I'd at least work out DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah, I guess you don't leave a stone unturned if you're the Rams on that one. I feel like if you're planning on doing more 13 personnel where there's only one wide receiver on the field, and potentially the Rams draft a wide receiver like it feels like they're going to, whether it be round 1, 2, or well, we don't have a third round pick. I don't think. I'd have to check on that one again. But if you're going to address the wide receiver position through the draft high and you already have Devontae Adams, you have Puka Nacua, it would be cool to have DeAndre Hopkins in there, good veteran presence, good contested catcher kind of guy. But like, how much is he going to get on the field? It's tough to tell. Watch out, 72 Dolphins. The Rams are here. Hey, I'm excited about that. If we could get an undefeated season and go on to win the Super Bowl, that'd be crazy. But I mean, like if the Rams lose, I don't know, one game, if they lose 5 games and they end up winning the Super Bowl, I don't really care. Like at the end of the day, if they can just get the Super Bowl done, seal the deal, get Stafford his other ring, that would make me happy. How can we improve against divisional opponents? That's a good question. I think main divisional opponent that I think about is the Seahawks. Obviously, they just won the Super Bowl. Even in the game that we won, there were close games. There were tough games. So I do think that what SoFi says underneath with the cornerback play, that definitely is going to help improve things a lot. It felt like, especially the NFC Championship game, like guys are just open all day. Whether we got pressured quick or not, there's just like wide open vacancies. So I do think that the cornerbacks does help a lot in that sense. 49ers, unfortunately, they did get a lot better in this offseason, in my opinion, getting Dre Greenlaw back, getting Mike Evans back. How many games are those guys going to play? How many are they going to be hurt? That's a whole other question. But Niners games typically are going to be close, and that's going to be tough for sure. But they do feel like they're largely an aging roster. And so I don't feel terrified to play the 49ers. And I feel like we've done a much better job over the last handful of years of handling them. Still mad about that SoFi game where we fumbled like a yard away from the end zone to win the game. That one's just ugh. But yeah, then Cardinals, this feels like a year that they're taking a step back to be able to take a step forward maybe in the years to come. So overall, I do think that the cornerbacks, having that address definitely is going to help a lot for the Rams. Familiarity in general, I think, is just going to make these games closer, but then having a superior roster is going to help put you over the top a little bit. When it comes to the Rams, because I keep going back to Rams Seahawks. I know Niners are going to be a problem. They always are. Rams and Seahawks, though, is like the objective number one. And how are we going to improve playing against them? I feel like I'm thinking about that game on Thursday night. You guys all know what we're talking about, that unfortunate collapse, 2-point call, all that kind of thing that ended up happening. And Seahawks got back in the game. They ended up winning. We know how that went. If the Rams could get better at like closing out games earlier, and we had a pretty good amount of blowouts this year, but just finishing a team off, not playing around, and keeping your foot on the gas pedal on teams, not letting it even come back to be close, even if the Rams win, just like put a team away. I think that would help the Rams a lot across these divisional matchups. Don't let it come down to the wire where a mistake could happen. Just play smart, be that veteran kind of team. It is kind of hard to like talking now here in March before we even get like all the way into the actual game matchups, but it does feel like a lot of the times when the Rams lost their games last year, and this sounds very much like a fan point perspective to make, but I did feel like the games that the Rams lost were more so them messing up than it was the teams doing well. Like I would say Seattle has the biggest argument to be like they played really well, and we tried to play our best game and we lost, but we made our mistakes. But there were a lot of those games like San Francisco early on that we lost, like Carolina middle of the season, like Philadelphia. Like we were up 26-7 in that game and we ended up losing. And it was like special teams errors. It was fumbling. It was dropping passes early on. So like putting teams away and not shooting yourself in the foot with a roster like this, 9 times out of 10, you're going to win. And so I think that, as cliche as it sounds, is just like play your football. Your roster is good enough to where if you're just not shooting yourself in the foot and you're putting teams away, you should be able to win most games, in my opinion. There's an arms race with Rams and the Niners. Niners loaded up on wide receiver this week. Yeah, Niners, they got Mike Evans, obviously, then Christian Kirk. So they got better at that wide receiver position. Again, Dre Greenlaw coming back at linebacker for them with Fred Warner is annoying. It's just annoying to have those two back together again for sure. But going to be interesting. Feels like anytime you kind of sleep on the Niners and maybe put them to the side a little bit, they just come back out again and they're competitive. So we'll see what ends up happening. If they stay healthy, they're obviously going to be a threat for sure. But I like our roster better than theirs, to be honest. Mudeep says they brought in those wide receivers to counter our cornerbacks. I like the test that we're going to have in the NFC West with the receivers that we're going to have to play, like Michael Wilson really coming into his own, Marvin Harrison, obviously junior, coming into his own, JSN, incredible, Rashid Shaheed getting paid, obviously facing Cooper Kupp, and then Mike Evans, Christian Kirk, Ricky Pearsall, because I don't think Brandon Ayuk is going to be there at all. So, those moves definitely countered our cornerbacks that we brought in, but I kind of like it as a test to be like, okay, how much better did the Rams actually get at this position? And it's going to be fun to see what they end up doing. So fire with the update. He says we are 35 days away from the NFL draft and 165 days away from the season opener. That's exciting. That's so exciting. Did you guys hear that? It's very weird that NFL season is going to open on a Wednesday, and it sounded like it was going to be the Rams and Niners in Australia at first, but now reports are saying that Seahawks and whoever they play will open on Wednesday. Rams and Niners are going to open on Thursday in Australia, which I personally like. I mean, playing a game on Wednesday night just sounds weird and like underwhelming. So I'm kind of glad we get the Thursday slot, but playing in Australia week 1 against the Niners definitely going to be different, but hopefully we can get out of there healthy. And I know it's a long trip. So I was a two-way starter in high school, center and defensive tackle. Defense was harder. You need a different dog in you. First rounders need to be defense. Snead nailed all the defensive picks and whiffed on the first rounds, on offensive first rounds. Definitely an interesting perspective. I didn't know that you were a two-way athlete. That's super cool. In high school, I definitely couldn't play those positions. If it were anything, I would be like receiver, cornerback. I couldn't do the trenches very well, but definitely need a different kind of mentality for defense. I don't mind thinking about the Rams, picking defenders in the first round before anything. Cause like you mentioned earlier, like the wide receiver class is loaded. So you can get one in the second round, in the third round, right? Like wherever. There's going to be a lot more of those guys, but I just have a feeling that the Rams are going to prioritize getting a weapon of some kind, like a tight end, like Sadiq. Still wouldn't surprise me, even with all that we have invested in the tight end room, but even a wide receiver like a Lemon, like a Jordan Tyson, like it feels to me that the Rams are going to prioritize that. And I wouldn't mind being wrong, but that just kind of feels like where they're headed, in my opinion. Taylor Austin was the last first-round wide receiver we got. That's crazy to think about. Especially with, like, when you think about having Cooper Kupp, you think about having Puka Nacua, Robert Woods, like all that kind of stuff. Like, it's crazy how was Robert Woods a first-round pick? I'm trying to remember. I know he was with the Bills, but let's see. I'm curious now. Second round pick. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, that's crazy to think about because obviously the Rams have brought in like Odell, who's a first round pick, but they didn't pick Odell. Devontae Adams, I thought was a first round pick. I forgot he was a third round pick, but it's a very interesting stat there. All league and all valley as a center, no big deal. That's just classic Muad'Dib stuff. Shouldn't surprise me. Just a legend. I was a linebacker that played O-line semi-pro in special teams in high school. I was a tight end and third string QB. Wow, that's crazy. Got some athletes in here. Probably know what they're talking about here with the draft and everything. I never did like any contact kind of sports and stuff because I live in a family with 7 other siblings. So everybody wanted to do sports. And my parents were like, that's just going to be too expensive. So didn't ever do any like professional or like even high school kind of padded sports. I did stuff like PE and stuff like that, obviously, but mainly did a lot of sports with my family growing up. And a couple of years ago, I did like a flag football league, really cool league that's here in Colorado. Obviously not fully contact, but they did stuff like press, they did bull rushes and things like that. So I was receiver and cornerback there, but nothing crazy like you guys like Muad'Dib and SoFire. The Super Bowl going to be much more with how hard it is to get out of the West. I agree. And people are talking about like in the last season that whoever won this Super Bowl was Super Bowl 60. Like it's not going to mean as much because the opponent in the Patriots just isn't great. And we saw that like they really weren't supposed to be there. But like my argument is like the teams that got to the point to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl like had to go to through the NFC West gauntlet. And the NFC was so much better than the AFC that was like, yeah, I mean, like the Seahawks got such an easy opponent. We would have too if we played the Patriots, but it's like you had to get out of the NFC West, which is a whole nother story. I think NFL should do a WWF situation and go every day. It could go all players like at least a week off each week. Interesting. Oh, this is cool. This is my photo is me playing linebacker. I Photoshop reflective gold Rams horn. I love playing a line defense was hard AF. I definitely imagine. Again, it takes that different mentality like you guys were talking about. So that's crazy. I like that Photoshop though with the gold Rams horns there. But that's just about gonna do it. Oh, actually, before I leave here, I think I had a starred comment from SoFire. He says, hey, Rams House, question which practice squad players from last year have the best chance of making 53 this championship year? That's a really good question, especially before knowing the draft. That's definitely going to be a little bit harder. But let's see. Just taking a look at what their practice squad was last year. As of August 27th, so this wasn't the most up-to-date. It was A.J. Arcuri, Wyatt Bowles, Drew Edwards, A.J. Green, the cornerback, Jack Heflin, Tanner Engel, Cam Lampkin, Dylan McMahon, Jamil Muhammad, Elias Neal, Bill Norton, Brennan Presley, Mark Redmond, Ronnie Rivers, Cody Schrader, and Nate Valcarcel. So we know that Cody Schrader, he ended up leaving to a couple different teams from the Rams. So obviously he's not on here. I don't think this is the most up-to-date list of the 16 players that made the Rams practice squad last season, but this was like heading into the year, their practice squad. So I wish I could find an updated one. But just going off of this list, somebody that could make the roster that wouldn't surprise me, honestly, for this year, A.J. Arcuri wouldn't surprise me at all, just as lineman depth. I believe he's still under contract with the Rams, if I'm not mistaken. But I think A.J. Arcuri wouldn't surprise me as a depth guy on the offensive line. He's been here for a while, and it would be about time, in my opinion, for him to make a roster. If Ronnie Rivers were back on the practice squad again, maybe he makes the roster. And there, it's getting hard to tell because the Rams always draft a running back. We had Jarquez Hunter, who didn't even touch the football last year for the Rams. And you have Blake Corum, you have Kyron Williams. But, I mean, Ronnie Rivers, if he's on the practice squad again, I wouldn't be surprised if he made the roster. So I would go with A.J. Arcuri and Ronnie Rivers if those two guys were on the practice squad again. But hard to tell at this point, honestly. Let's see if we can get out of the... So thanks for the shout-out. Whose house? Ryan's house. Oh, yeah, of course. Thank you so much for coming in here so far. I appreciate you and all your comments and all your support in here. He says, I think Brennan Presley at wide receiver. Really? That's kind of bold with the Rams wide receiver room looking like it is. It's like as it stands right now, we have Devontae Adams, we have Puka Nacua, we have Konate Muntfield, and somebody people always forget about is Jordan Whittington. Like I always hear people talking about Konate Mumfield's going to take a big step and like that could happen, or Konate Mumfield's wide receiver 3, whatever. It's like, what happened to Jordan Whittington? Like I still really like Whittington. I'm not really sure why he hasn't gotten featured a lot. Like, especially last year, it felt like Mumfield overtook him in some way, but I really like what Whittington can do. So Presley in there, that's definitely a bold prediction, but I know that he had a lot of hype coming out of that preseason and out of the practices. So not a bad pick overall, but thank you guys so much for watching this stream. It was a lot of fun. Sorry for the delay. Again, had to move the streams and do all of that. But yeah, to wrap it up, I would say the Rams offseason gets an A to this point. So you can't really get a lot worse when you have a full draft and more different options that the Rams could bring in here. Now we're just banking on health because this roster is good enough to go out there and win a Super Bowl. You can make an argument the last 2 years they could have done that. But now they've severely upgraded their biggest weaknesses. So I'm excited to see what's to come in the future. But thank you guys all so much for watching. I appreciate you guys. Hope you have a great day. Horns up and God bless.